There is a moment that happens once, and only once, in the life of a person who has been hurt too many times by the same kind of people. It is the moment they stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and they finally ask the only question that has ever mattered. What is it in me that keeps inviting this in? That question is uncomfortable. It is much easier to believe that toxic people are simply everywhere, that you have been unlucky, that the world is full of difficult souls and you happen to keep crossing their path. It is easier to blame the world, to point to the pattern of difficult people in your life, and conclude that this is simply your fate. But I want to offer you a different truth today, one that is harder to hear, but infinitely more powerful to understand. Toxic people are not drawn to your face, or your name, or your circumstances. They are drawn to your frequency, to your level of reactivity, to the cracks in you where they know they can gain entry. They are drawn to something in your energy that is still available to them, still reachable, still responsive, in the exact way their pattern requires. And the moment you change that frequency, something extraordinary happens. Not because you fought them, not because you confronted them, but because you simply became someone they could no longer reach. Today, I want to show you the one shift, the one internal change, that once it happens inside you, toxic people lose their power over you permanently. Not temporarily, not until the next manipulation finds a new angle, permanently. Because what we are building today is not a defense. It is a transformation of the ground you stand on. And once that ground has changed, the old patterns simply cannot grow in it anymore. Let us begin where all true change begins, inside. Most people believe boundaries are something you say, a sentence, a confrontation, a line drawn in conversation. They imagine that the work of dealing with toxic people is primarily verbal, primarily external, primarily about finding the right words to say at the right moment, to finally make the other person understand. But I want to tell you something I have seen proven again and again over decades of training students in stillness and self-mastery. The boundary that actually holds is never spoken first. It is built first, in silence, inside your own nervous system. Think about why toxic people are able to affect you in the first place. It is not because they are powerful. It is not because they possess some special insight or strength. It is because some part of you is still reactive to them, still hoping to be understood by them, still believing that if you explain yourself clearly enough, defend yourself firmly enough, prove yourself worthy enough, they will finally treat you the way you deserve. That hope is the door they walk through, every single time. And here is the truth that changes everything. The moment you stop needing them to understand you, stop needing their approval, stop needing the conflict to resolve in your favor, the door closes. Not because you slammed it shut in anger. Not because you announced its closing with declarations and ultimatums, but because you simply stopped standing in the doorway waiting for them. This is the one thing you must do. Not say it, not announce it. Build it, quietly, inside yourself, in the private place where no one else can see what you are becoming. Stop reacting. I do not mean stop feeling. You will still feel the sting of their words. You will still notice the manipulation when it arrives. The feelings are not the problem, and were never the problem. But there is a profound difference between feeling something and being controlled by it. Between noticing the provocation and following it. Between experiencing an emotion and becoming the emotion completely. When someone insults you, the untrained mind moves instantly. It wants to defend. It wants to correct the record. It wants the other person to see how wrong they are. It wants the satisfaction of the last word, the perfect comeback, the moment of recognition where the other person finally acknowledges your point. And in that instant of wanting, in that automatic forward motion, you have done exactly what they wanted you to do. You have handed them your attention, your energy, your peace. You have entered the arena they constructed, and now you are fighting on their terms, in their territory, by their rules. The trained mind does something different. It feels the insult arrive like a stone thrown into still water. It watches the ripple. It does not become the ripple. It simply observes, breathes, and asks one question before it does anything else. Does this deserve my energy? Most of the time, the answer is no. This single habit, the pause between what happens and how you respond, is the foundation of everything we are about to discuss. Because once you have it, every other practice becomes possible. Without it, nothing else matters. You can know every principle I am about to share. You can understand them perfectly in your mind, and still find yourself back in the old pattern within seconds, because the pause was never built. Understanding without practice is just decoration. The pause is where the practice actually lives. Let me tell you why this pause is so much harder than it sounds, and why most people fail to build it, even when they understand its importance. The pause requires you to sit with discomfort. The discomfort of being misunderstood and not correcting it immediately. The discomfort of being accused of something and not defending yourself immediately. The discomfort of watching someone walk away, believing something untrue about you, and choosing not to chase them down with explanations. This discomfort is not small. For someone whose entire emotional life has been organized around being seen correctly, around being understood, around managing how others perceive them, this discomfort feels almost unbearable at first. But here is what happens when you sit with that discomfort long enough. It begins to lose its power. You discover that you can survive being misunderstood. You can survive being thought less of. You can survive the unfairness of someone walking away with the wrong impression. The world does not end. You do not dissolve. The discomfort passes, the way all feelings eventually pass. And on the other side of it, you discover something extraordinary. You discover that you needed their understanding much less than you thought you did. This discovery is the beginning of real freedom. Now let me tell you why this single shift is so much more powerful than confrontation. Toxic people feed on emotional access. Not your hatred of them, not your anger, access. The simple fact that they can reach you, disturb you, occupy space in your mind even when they are nowhere near you. This is what gives them their sense of control, not winning the argument, being able to start one whenever they choose, knowing they can walk into your day, drop a single comment, and watch it ripple through your hours. When you stop reacting, you do not defeat them in the way they expect. You do something far more devastating to their pattern. You become unreachable. And a person who cannot be reached cannot be controlled. I have watched this happen with students who came to me believing the answer was to become harder, sharper, more aggressive in their boundaries. They wanted to learn how to fight back better, how to win the verbal battles, how to leave the other person speechless. And I always tell them the same thing. The strongest wall is not the one that pushes back the hardest. It is the one that does not move at all, regardless of what strikes it. A wall that pushes back is still in a relationship with the force striking it. It is still responding, still engaged, still spending energy on the exchange. But a wall that simply stands, unmoved, indifferent to the force thrown against it, that wall has left the relationship entirely. It is no longer participating in the conflict, and nothing frustrates a person who depends on conflict more than the absence of an opponent. There is something else you must understand about silence, because it is widely misunderstood. People think silence means weakness, that the person who does not respond has nothing to say or is too afraid to say it. They imagine the silent person as defeated, as overwhelmed, as unable to keep up with the verbal exchange. But true silence, the kind I am describing, is not the silence of fear. It is the silence of someone who has already decided their peace is worth more than being right. It is active. It is a choice made again and again, moment by moment. And it communicates something far louder than any argument ever could. It says, I see what you are doing, and I am simply not available for it. This is deeply unsettling to a person who relies on your reaction to feel powerful. When the reaction does not come, they are left holding their own provocation with nowhere to put it. And over time, they begin to understand, often without consciously realizing it, that this particular door is closed to them now. Some will escalate, hoping to find the right key. Some will accuse you of being cold, of having changed, of being arrogant, anything to bait a response. But if you have built the pause well, if you have done the inner work, even these escalations will not move you. They will simply be more stones falling into water that no longer ripples. I want you to picture this clearly. A person throws a stone, expecting it to land somewhere, to create a splash, to disturb something. But the target is no longer there. The stone simply falls. There is no impact, no reaction to study, no emotional residue to feed on. And a person who has thrown stones their whole life and watched them land successfully every time is deeply disoriented when a stone finally falls into nothing. This disorientation is not your goal. You are not trying to confuse them or punish them with your silence. But it is a natural consequence of no longer being available for their pattern. And eventually, most people who operate this way will simply move toward easier targets, not because you defeated them, but because you became too much effort for too little reward. The pattern needs fuel, and you have stopped providing it. But I want to go deeper than the behavior, because behavior alone, without understanding, will not hold for long. You can practice silence for a week, even a month, but if you have not changed what lives beneath the silence, the old pattern will eventually return. You will have a difficult day. Your guard will lower. Someone will find the exact words that used to work, and you will discover that the silence was only ever a performance sitting on top of an unhealed wound. So let us look beneath the surface. Why were you reactive to begin with? Why did certain words, certain behaviors, certain people have the power to disturb your peace so completely? The honest answer, the one most people avoid, is that something inside you was already unsettled before they ever arrived. A wound, a belief, a fear that had been living quietly, waiting for the right trigger to bring it to the surface. The person who said you are not good enough did not create that fear. They touched a place where that fear was already living. The person who tried to control you did not create your need for approval. They found a need that was already there, searching for somewhere to land. The person who dismissed you did not invent your fear of being unseen. They simply walked past a door that was already unlocked, and the part of you that was waiting on the other side reached out for them automatically. This is not your fault. These wounds come from somewhere. Childhood, past relationships, years of being taught, in ways subtle and not so subtle, that your worth depended on how others saw you, how much you achieved, how well you performed for the approval of people whose love felt conditional. Maybe you were a child who learned early that love came with requirements. Maybe you were taught that being good meant being accommodating, that being loved meant being useful, that being safe meant being whatever the people around you needed you to be in any given moment. These early lessons do not disappear when you become an adult. They simply go underground. They operate from beneath, shaping which compliments you crave, which criticisms you cannot bear, which relationships feel familiar even when they are clearly harmful. The familiarity is the trap. The patterns of pain you grew up with feel like home to your nervous system, even when your conscious mind knows they are destructive. This is why people often find themselves repeating the same kinds of relationships over and over, with different faces but the same underlying dynamic. Understanding where the wound came from is not the same as staying inside it. Understanding is the first step toward freedom, not an excuse to remain where you are. Many people learn to articulate their wounds beautifully, but never actually do the work of healing them. They become expert at describing their pain, fluent in the language of their trauma, but the wound itself remains untouched, still active, still pulling their reactions from beneath the surface. The work, the real work, is to find these places inside yourself and bring them into the light. not to punish yourself for having them, not to pretend they do not exist, performing a strength you have not actually built, but to see them clearly enough that they stop operating in the dark, pulling your reactions like invisible strings attached to parts of you that you have never fully examined. When you do this work, something remarkable happens. The same comment that used to destroy your entire day now passes through you like wind through an open window, not because you have become numb, but because the place inside you that used to catch it, hold it, and turn it into suffering has been healed. This is why some people seem completely unaffected by things that would devastate others. It is not that nothing has ever happened to them. It is not that they were born with thicker skin or a calmer temperament. It is that they have done the work of meeting their own wounds directly, instead of spending their life protecting them from ever being touched. Think about how much energy goes into protecting an unhealed wound. The avoidance, the defensiveness, the constant scanning for threats to that particular vulnerability. A person carrying an unexamined wound is exhausted before the day even begins, because part of their mind is always on guard duty, always watching for the next thing that might touch the sore place. Every conversation becomes a potential threat. Every silence becomes a possible rejection. Every neutral expression on another person's face becomes a question that needs answering. When the wound is healed, that guard duty ends. The energy that was spent protecting returns to you. And you discover, often with surprise, how much capacity you actually have once you are no longer spending half of it defending old injuries. You can be present in conversations without scanning them for danger. You can hear criticism without internal collapse. You can sit with someone's bad mood without making it about you. The world becomes less exhausting because you have stopped fighting battles that were never actually about the present moment. Now I want to talk about something the world rarely teaches. Something that goes against everything instinct tells you to do when someone treats you poorly. Stop trying to be understood by people who have already decided not to understand you. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from explaining yourself to someone who is not actually listening. They are waiting for their turn to speak. They are looking for the next opening to twist your words. They are not interested in your truth. They are interested in maintaining the version of you that benefits them, the version that doubts itself, the version that keeps explaining, the version that has not yet learned its own worth, does not require their verdict. And the moment you understand this, you can stop wasting yourself on it. A diamond does not lose its value because someone insists on calling it glass. It remains exactly what it is, regardless of who is looking at it, regardless of what they choose to believe about it. Your worth does not require their agreement to be real. It existed before they arrived in your life, and it will continue existing long after they have left it, whether that departure happens by your choice or by the simple passage of time. Release the need for them to see you clearly. Speak your truth once, if it needs to be spoken at all, with calm and clarity, and then let it go. Not because you do not care, but because you have learned that some doors, no matter how many times you knock, were never going to open, and standing there knocking is costing you something you cannot get back. Time, energy, peace, years of your one life, spent at a door that was sealed before you ever arrived. This is one of the deepest forms of personal power, the ability to be at peace with being misunderstood by people who were never going to understand you in the first place. Not everyone is meant to understand you. Not everyone has the capacity, the maturity, or the genuine interest required to see you clearly. And accepting this is not defeat. It is freedom from a battle you were never going to win, because the other side never intended to surrender. I want to add something here that is important. There is a difference between people who do not understand you because they are not capable, and people who do not understand you because they are choosing not to. The first group deserves your compassion. They simply do not have the tools or the experience to see what you are showing them. You can release the relationship without resentment, because the failure is not malicious. It is human limitation, and we all have it in various forms. But the second group, the ones who could understand and refuse to, the ones who actively choose misunderstanding because the misunderstanding serves them, these are the people we are really talking about. They benefit from confusing you. They benefit from making you doubt yourself. They benefit from the version of the story where you are always slightly wrong, slightly too much, slightly too sensitive. And the energy you spend trying to correct their version is energy that feeds the dynamic they have built around you. Stop feeding it, not with confrontation, not with explanation, with absence. With your quiet refusal to participate in the loop they have constructed. Now let us talk about something that often surprises people when they first hear it. The less you focus on toxic people, the less power they have over your life. This sounds almost too simple to be true, but I want you to think honestly about where your energy has been going. How many hours have you spent thinking about what they said, rehearsing what you should have said back, imagining the conversation where you finally make them understand, where the perfect words arrive, and they finally see how wrong they were, checking to see what they are doing, wondering if they have changed, hoping they will apologize, even though some part of you already knows the apology is never coming. All of that attention, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, is energy you are giving away. And here is the uncomfortable truth. They do not need to be near you to control your mind if you keep bringing them into it yourself. They do not need to send another message. They are already living rent-free in a space that could be used for something that actually builds your life. The path away from this is not complicated, though it is not easy. You simply begin to redirect your attention toward your own life, your own growth, your own purpose, not as a way of running from the situation, but as a way of finally giving your energy somewhere it can actually build something, instead of somewhere it only maintains old pain. When your attention moves from why are they like this to how do I become who I am meant to be, everything shifts. Not because the toxic person changed, but because they stopped occupying the space in your mind that they used to live in rent-free, and that space began to fill with something that actually belongs to you. I want to give you something practical here, because this redirection is not automatic. It requires intention. Every time you catch your mind returning to them, you must gently bring it back, not with frustration, not with self-criticism, simply with the recognition that this is not where your attention belongs anymore, and the gentle redirection towards something that matters more. This is a practice. It will not work the first time you try it. The mind has built strong pathways toward these thoughts, and those pathways do not dissolve immediately. But every time you redirect, you weaken those old pathways slightly and strengthen new ones. After weeks of this, after months of this, the redirection becomes easier because the new pathways have become the default. The mind, given any open moment, will return to what you have trained it to return to. Train it to return to your own growth, to your own peace, to the things you are building, to the people who actually deserve your time and your love. Over time, the toxic people will fade not because anything dramatic happened, but because they have been replaced in your mental landscape by things that actually nourish you. And here is what happens as a result, something almost paradoxical. The less you focus on them, the less they are able to affect you. The less they are able to affect you, the less interesting you become as a target. Toxic patterns require a certain kind of engagement to survive. They are not self-sustaining. They require fuel, and that fuel is your attention, your reaction, your continued participation in the dynamic. Remove the engagement, and the pattern starves on its own, slowly, quietly, without any dramatic confrontation required. I want to speak now about protecting your peace, because this is where many people, even those who understand everything we have discussed so far, still struggle the most. You must understand that your peace is not a luxury. It is not something you protect once you have handled everything else, once the bills are paid and the obligations are met. and there is finally time left over for yourself. It is the foundation everything else is built on. Without it, your decisions become reactive. Your relationships become unstable. Your growth slows because so much of your energy is spent managing internal chaos instead of building something meaningful with the days you have been given. Protecting your peace sometimes looks like walking away from a conversation that is going nowhere good, even when every instinct tells you to stay and finish making your point. Sometimes it looks like not responding to a message that exists only to provoke you, even when the silence feels almost unbearable in the moment. Sometimes it looks like simply choosing not to attend the argument someone is trying to invite you into, an invitation you are always free to decline. None of these choices require explanation. You do not owe anyone access to your inner world simply because they demand it loudly enough. You are allowed to simply decide, quietly and without announcement, that something is not worth what it would cost you. This is one of the hardest lessons for people who have spent their lives trying to be understood, trying to be fair, trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, even when that doubt has been disproven again and again. But peace is not unfair. Peace is necessary. And the moment you start treating it as non-negotiable, you begin making completely different choices about who and what gets access to it. I want you to imagine your peace as a room inside a house. For most of your life, that room has had an open door. Anyone could walk in. Anyone could rearrange the furniture, leave their mess, disturb the quiet, and walk back out without consequence. And you spent your days cleaning up after people who were never invited to leave a mess in the first place. The work we are discussing today is the work of installing a door. Not a locked door that keeps everyone out forever, but a door with a handle that only you control. People can knock, you can decide who enters, and those who have shown you, again and again, that they cannot be trusted inside that room, simply do not get to enter anymore. Not out of cruelty, out of self-respect. Some people will be offended when they discover the door exists. They had grown comfortable with the open access. They had built parts of their identity around their ability to walk freely into your inner world, and now that access is gone. They will call this change unfair. They will call you different, distant, cold, changed. They will mourn the old version of you, the one who could be reached at any time with any provocation. Let them. Their offense at your boundaries is not a sign that the boundaries are wrong. It is a sign that the boundaries are working. People who genuinely respected you would have never required you to leave your inner world open in the first place. Their offense is information. It tells you exactly who was benefiting from your lack of boundaries and exactly who you needed to install the door against. There is one more thing I want you to understand, and it may be the most important part of everything we have discussed today. This transformation does not happen loudly. It does not happen through a dramatic confrontation where you finally say everything you have been holding back for years, where the room falls silent and everyone finally understands how deeply they have wronged you. That moment, the one so many people are secretly waiting for, rarely arrives in the way the imagination promises, and waiting for it only keeps you tethered to the very dynamic you are trying to leave. It does not happen through a public declaration of your new boundaries, an announcement made so that everyone knows you have changed, so that the change can be witnessed and validated by an audience. Real change rarely needs witnesses. In fact, the need for an audience is often a sign that the change has not fully settled yet, that some part of you still needs the old dynamic acknowledged before you can let it go. It happens quietly, inside you, in moments no one else will ever see. It happens the day you choose not to respond to a message designed to provoke you, and you feel the old pull to defend yourself rise and pass without you following it. It happens the day you catch yourself replaying an old argument in your mind, and gently, without judgment, bring your attention back to your own breath instead. It happens the day you realize an entire week has passed, and you have not thought about someone who used to occupy your every waking thought, and the realization arrives not with triumph, but with a quiet, almost surprising sense of spaciousness. These moments are small. They feel almost insignificant when they happen. You will not feel a dramatic shift the first time you successfully resist the pull to react. You may not even notice it has happened until much later, looking back. But these moments accumulate. They build on each other, the way every meaningful transformation builds, slowly, invisibly, beneath the surface, the way roots grow before anyone ever sees the tree change shape above the ground. And one day, without any specific moment you can point to, you realize that the person who used to be able to ruin your entire day with a single sentence no longer has that power. Not because they stopped trying. Many of them will keep trying, because the pattern that worked before is the only pattern they know. But you stopped giving them somewhere to land. The stone keeps being thrown. It simply no longer finds a target. This is what I mean when I say do this once. Not because the practice itself is a single action you perform one time and then forget, but because there is a single internal shift, one decisive turning point, the moment you stop needing the outside world to behave a certain way before you can feel at peace. That changes everything that follows from that point forward. Before that shift, you are constantly negotiating your peace with the world around you, begging circumstances to align, hoping people will finally treat you the way you deserve, waiting for an apology, a recognition, a change in someone else's behavior before you allow yourself to exhale. Your entire emotional state is a hostage to forces outside your control. After that shift, your peace belongs entirely to you, and nothing outside of you can take it without your permission. This is not a small difference. This is the difference between a life spent reacting to whatever the world decides to hand you, and a life built from a center that no external force can move. I want to address something honestly, because I do not want to leave you with an incomplete picture. This shift does not mean you become indifferent to everyone and everything. It does not mean you stop caring about justice, about being treated well, about the people who genuinely deserve your time and your love. The goal is not numbness. The goal is discernment. You will still recognize cruelty when you see it. You will still feel the appropriate response to genuine wrongdoing. But you will no longer be at the mercy of every person who wishes to disturb you, because your peace will no longer be sitting unprotected, available to anyone who reaches for it. You will reserve your deepest engagement for those who have earned it through their own consistency, their own respect, their own genuine care for you, and you will offer only distance, calm, and silence to those who have proven they do not deserve more.
This is not coldness.
It is wisdom, the same wisdom that teaches a farmer not to plant seeds in soil that has shown, season after season, that nothing grows there. He does not hate the soil, he simply stops returning to it, and instead takes his seeds to ground that can actually receive them. I also want to speak briefly to something many people feel but rarely say out loud. There may be grief in this process. Grief for the relationship you wished you had with this person. Grief for the version of them you kept hoping would appear if you were just patient enough, just understanding enough, just good enough. Releasing the need for their approval sometimes means releasing a dream you have been carrying for a very long time, a dream of how things were supposed to be. Let yourself feel that grief if it arrives. It is not a sign of weakness or failure in the practice. It is simply part of letting go of something that was never going to materialize, no matter how long you waited or how much you gave. On the other side of that grief is a lightness you have likely not felt in a very long time, the lightness of no longer carrying a hope that was quietly exhausting you every single day it remained unfulfilled. I want to share one more thing with you, something that has taken me many years to fully understand, and which may be the deepest layer of this entire teaching. The peace you are searching for is not actually new. It is not something you have to build from nothing, something foreign to you, something that exists outside of you and must be brought in. It is something that was always there, beneath everything else, beneath all the noise and the wounds and the patterns. It was buried, but it was never destroyed. When a person finds their way back to that peace, they often describe the experience not as gaining something new, but as remembering something they had forgotten. A return rather than an arrival. The peace was waiting all along, beneath the years of accumulated reactivity, beneath the layers of hurt that had been protecting it. And the work was not to create it, but to clear away everything that had been blocking access to it. This is why I say you must remember who you were before they arrived. Because that person is still there. The you that existed before the wound. The you that lived before the patterns took hold. The you that knew, without needing to be taught, that your peace was your own and could not be taken without your permission. That you is still there. The work is not invention. The work is excavation. Sit quietly with this for a moment. Beneath all the reactions you have learned, beneath all the strategies you have developed for managing difficult people, beneath all the wounds that have shaped your responses, there is something simple and whole and still. It has been there the entire time. It is there right now, even as you read these words. It does not require anything from anyone. It does not need to be earned or proven or defended. Returning to that place is the entire practice. Everything else we have discussed today is simply different angles on this single return. The pause is a return. The silence is a return. The protected peace is a return. Every time you choose not to react, you are choosing to return. Every time you redirect your attention from someone who does not deserve it, you are returning. Every time you let yourself feel without becoming the feeling, you are returning. And the more often you return, the more easily the return happens. Eventually, the place that once required effort to reach becomes your default. You live there most of the time. You leave it occasionally, when something difficult arrives, but the leaving is brief, and the return is automatic. You no longer need to remember how to come home, because home has become where you are. This is what true peace looks like, not the absence of difficulty. Not a life without challenge or hurt or moments of disturbance, but a life where you have built such a firm relationship with your own center that nothing can keep you away from it for long. The disturbances still arrive, but they pass through you instead of taking you over. You meet them, feel them, and return to yourself again and again, until returning is the easiest thing you do. I want to leave you with this. You are not required to fix every person who has hurt you. You are not required to make them understand. You are not required to win every argument, prove every point, or receive every apology you deserve and may never receive. You are only required to do one thing: return to yourself. Again and again, as many times as it takes, until returning becomes more natural than leaving ever was. The toxic people in your life are not as powerful as they appear. They were only ever as powerful as the access you gave them. And the day you quietly, without announcement, without drama, without a single confrontation, stop giving that access, is the day their power over you ends completely. Not because you defeated them, because you finally remembered who you were before they ever arrived. And once that memory is fully restored, once you are standing firmly in that ground again, nothing they say, nothing they do, nothing they attempt, can ever reach that place inside you again. That is the one thing. That is the whole practice. Everything else we have discussed today, the pause, the silence, the redirected attention, the protected peace, the healing of old wounds, the release of the need to be understood, all of it flows from this single shift. Build it once, build it honestly, build it patiently, and you will find that toxic people simply stop showing up the way they used to. Not because the world ran out of difficult people, but because you are no longer the kind of ground they can grow in. The transformation is already beginning. The moment you decided to take this seriously, the moment you started reading these words with genuine attention instead of casual interest, something inside you shifted. A door opened. A possibility became real that had not been real before. What you do with that opening is your choice. You can close it again, return to the old patterns, find 1,000 reasons why this work is too difficult, or too slow, or not quite right for your specific situation. Or you can step through. You can begin, today, in the very next interaction you have, to practice the one thing, the pause, the return, the quiet refusal to be moved by what does not deserve to move you. That is where everything begins. Not in some future moment when conditions are perfect, not when you have finally figured everything out, not when the difficult people in your life have changed or disappeared. Now, in the very next moment of choice, the next time something arrives that wants to disturb you, the next time someone reaches for the access you have been giving them, the next time the old pattern presents itself for repetition. In that moment, remember this: you have a choice. You have always had a choice. The reactions felt automatic only because they were practiced. They can be unpracticed. They can be replaced with something else, something quieter, something rooted, something that belongs to you completely and cannot be taken by anyone who has not been invited to take it. Choose that. Choose it again the next time. Choose it the time after that. And one day, without any announcement, without any specific moment of triumph, you will realize that the choosing has become who you are. The pause has become your nature. The return has become your default. And the people who once seemed to have such power over you have become exactly what they always actually were: small, distant, unable to reach the place inside you where you actually live. This is the work. This is the practice. This is the one thing. Begin it now.